I feel like I got incredibly lucky with Lightning Rod at Dollywood because not only did I get to ride this attraction for the first time in its last operating year with a launch, but I also basically had zero problems with downtime for this ride. So I feel so lucky because I've been so excited to ride this thing for years on years on years. So when I finally got to Dollywood in 2023, things just went perfectly. It did break down while I was at the park, but I'd always be somewhere else in the park. Whenever I was there to ride Lightning Rod was open. So I feel super blessed and super lucky that everything worked out. And now that we know that the launch is being removed, it's just wow. That's absolutely wild. The world's first launch wooden coaster is barely a wooden coaster anymore, and now it's losing its launch. So the fact that it went from a launched wooden coaster in 2016 to it's basically just going to be a traditional steel coaster in 2024, that's kind of hilarious. So to see the story of this ride play out over almost a decade is kind of wild, and I feel so fortunate that I got to experience this ride. I got 9 rides on this thing over the course of 3 days at Dollywood's. I definitely feel like I have a great understanding of this attraction and what makes it so great to so many people. So on my first day at Dollywood, I only got to ride Lightning Rod twice, and both of my rides were in the back row. I think the first one was second to back, and then I got back row. And then on day 3, I got to ride this 3 times in a row basically, and I got a bunch of rides in the front row or row 2. For whatever reason, Dollywood wasn't loading the front row on one of their trains that day, which is kind of bizarre, but whatever. But yeah, the front row is absolutely my favorite row on this ride. So we're going to dig into that as we break down these elements. So when you roll out of the station, you're going to hit that infamous launch. And I gotta be perfectly honest, I was kind of disappointed with this launch because everyone raves about like the intensity of that launch stemming it from it being uphill, but I don't know, I wasn't that impressed with it. Like, I feel like it had a nice zip when it started, but when you're actually going up the hill, I didn't feel that many positive G's. Like, in the back, you get a little bit, but I don't know, man. I'm not even just saying this because the launch is getting removed. Like, this is what I thought in July. In July of 2023, I was disappointed with the launch on Lightning Rod. So, if you're really bummed out that you missed out on this launch, I mean, I guess it's unique, but you don't need to be that disappointed. The best parts of Lightning Rod are gonna be there for years to come. So when everyone was upset about this news, I was just kind of like, okay. It's not that big of a deal to me, and from my experience is in 2023. I understand that way back in 2016, 2017, the launch was definitely at a higher speed or a more sustained speed, however it used to be. But that Lightning Rod is long gone, so I missed out on that. From the 2023 launch, it was okay. In the front row, you get some light floater airtime cresting the dolly. You get some weak floater in the back cresting over it, and then you dip down and then back up just to go down this massive drop. When you're at the top of Lightning Rod, you have a great view up there. Like on my second day, I got to ride during the sunset, and it was just beautiful, man. I love the setting for this thing. Like most of Dollywood's coasters, it's just absolutely beautiful. So let's dig into this drop. Obviously in the front row, it's not going to be the greatest thing. Like, you get some light floater. I think it's definitely better than most RMC drops in the front row because you have so much speed coming into it. But really my big issue with this drop is I feel like it levels out a lot sooner than most RMC drops, and from what it looks like, just from being on the ride, I feel like they had to do that because of the terrain. So for that reason, even in the back row where you get some nice airtime cresting into the drop with that speed from the launch and the dolly, it was all right. It was a very strong moment, but it just wasn't as strong as I thought it would be because it levels out so early because of the terrain, which is probably something that I should have expected, but I didn't. So that first valley is going to be a little rattly. It's not terrible. I'm pretty sure this is one of the sections that they retrack. It's kind of hard to tell when you're on the ride because you're going so fast and the track looks pretty similar. But this first valley was was not terrible. After that, you're gonna crest into a gigantic wave turn. Like, oh my gosh, man. This is definitely my favorite part of Lightning Rod. You get crazy ejector airtime while you're sideways, and you're so high off the ground, too. It's just absolutely bonkers. Like, I can't believe this element exists on such a large scale. Like, it kind of reminds me of the treble clef on Fury. Really, the major difference is that the drop is straight on the treble clef, while on Lightning Rod, it curves out of that. So for that reason, I feel like the treble clef is better. But the sideways airtime is just absolutely spectacular. That's definitely a hands up moment, because wow. It's so much fun. But right after that, you drop into my least favorite part of the ride, which is the second valley on Lightning Rod. In 2023, it was super rattly. Super rattly. This is going to be kind of a tangent, but I really don't like RMC iBox coaster restraints. I feel like the boxy design is fine. Like, I don't really care that much about it. But the thing is, the restraints are so heavy and they're kind of like bricks, or they're like brick shaped, you know? So they're pretty heavy, especially when you pull it up at the end of the ride. It takes an unnecessary amount of effort to do that. But if you're a coaster enthusiast like myself and you want airtime, you're going to have to hold up these really thick lap bars that are unnecessarily heavy. And that takes a lot of effort during a ride experience, especially the positive G sections like the valleys. And the second valley on Lightning Rod is so rattly that it takes a tremendous amount of effort to hold that lap bar up so you can still have your airtime room for the legendary quad down, which of course is at the end of the freaking ride. So you got to keep that thing up for the entire ride experience. On my second ride, on my first day at Dollywood, I gave up, which was dumb in hindsight. But I didn't want to continue to hold up the lap bar, especially like this valley is just gnarly, man. And considering they retracked this thing, I don't know why they wouldn't retract a valley. Like, that seems like a very high stress area of the ride. And and from this year, it was my least favorite part of the ride. So the fact that they didn't do that when they retracked the ride just makes zero sense to me. I mean, I didn't ride Lightning Rod before the retrack, so maybe this area used to be smooth, and now that they addressed the sections that were worse than it, maybe now it just sticks out like a sore thumb, or maybe it's gotten worse, I don't know. But I hope that they address this section of track at some point in the future. And then right after that, you go into a sideways wave turn pretty much. I think this element, the next two elements are called twist and shouts. But this element is profiled just like the green side high five on Twisted Colossus, but it's on a much larger scale, and I feel like it's much more intense, and it's far better than the one on Twisted Colossus. You take it with a lot more speed, and you get sideways airtime again, which is super cool. It's an awesome element. And then after that, you basically hit an outer banked hill, but unlike the one on Steel Vengeance, it's straight. So it's more like a drawn out trick track double up, like the one on Twisted Timbers, but just make it one giant hill instead of two bunny hills. So for that reason, I definitely prefer the Outer Banks on Steel Vengeance and Pantheon over the straight one on Lightning Rod. So to be honest, I would have preferred just the traditional hill at this point, but you know, it throws in variety, especially with what follows after that, which is an insane run of airtime hills. Everyone talks about the quad down, but there's a hill right before the quad down and a hill right after the quad down. So it's almost like 6 insane airtime moments just back to back to back to back to back. It's absolutely wild. And I gotta be honest, I didn't expect to like the quad down as much as everyone else. I went in with lower expectations because for my tastes, I feel like I prefer sustained airtime over strength of airtime. And from what I understood, it sounded like the quad down was just rapid pops of strong airtime. And that's what it is, but I loved it, man. I mean, I don't know what I was thinking, but yeah, there's breaks in the airtime, but they're back to back to back to back. So it feels like one insane moment. So the sustained issue wasn't that big of a deal. It wasn't a big deal at all. I love this thing, man. This is crazy. It's just, it's wild. And the visuals of you racing down that hill is just, it was beautiful. And you're getting closer and closer. You're like barreling towards the park, which is just so much fun. Oh my gosh. This element lives up to the hype. Like, I don't know why I didn't buy into it, because this is insane. But I do love the wave turn too. This and the wave turn, just unreal. Right after that, you hit the turnaround, which is the final element of this ride, which is kind of bizarre for a layout, but this ride's super unique, so that's not a complaint at all. I'm just pointing that out. It's kind of built like the treble clef on Fury, but the drop it's obviously on a much smaller scale, and the drop is straight instead of sideways, but it's a very fun element. I was expecting a little more from it, but it's sick. When you're in the front row, you get some solid G's as you crest up into the top of the element, because I feel like the turn gets tighter as you reach the top. Like the actual upward helix portion of the element wasn't as intense as I thought it would be. And then obviously the drop into the brake run is going to be far better in the back row than in the front. But yeah, it has tremendous variety of forces in such a small moment. So it's a sick finale to an incredible ride experience. Like, I gotta be honest, I thought I would like Lightning Rod, but I didn't think I would love it, because I didn't think that it catered to my tastes. Like, obviously I love airtime, but as I mentioned, I love sustained airtime. And Diamondback is my favorite roller coaster of all time, so that kind of tells you what type of roller coaster enthusiast I am. But I was blown away by Lightning Rod. I put it in my top 5. This thing is awesome, man. I am so happy that I loved it as much as I did, because this thing is incredible. It's an amazing ride experience. My only complaint is that second valley on the ride, which is something that can be addressed, so it's not that big of a deal. And as I did mention, I was a little disappointed by the launch, but this ride is about the layout, so I don't care that much, and it's not even going to exist anymore, so that's fine. Like, as long as this 2023-24 refurbishment doesn't impact how the coaster takes the rest of the layout, I don't think it's going to be that big of a deal at all. I think it's still going to be one of the United States' top roller coasters. It's just crazy. And what I didn't know is that this ride, like, it leaves the park. Like, I knew it was out in the woods, but it literally crosses a service road and goes into, like, its own valley. Like, there's, like, I don't know what I expected, but I didn't know that it like literally left the park. Like, if you look at a map of Dollywood, you can see how Lightning Rod is by itself. Like, there's nothing around it. It's just so unique. And when I was on the drop tower, it's just such a cool view over there. Like, it's a beautiful ride, and I love this thing a lot more than I expected it to. Because as I mentioned, I'm not the biggest fan of RMC restraints, and that was kind of a big deal to me, but I've been learning to cope with holding it up during the whole ride, so like I have a few strategies to manage it now and to keep my airtime room. So I was able to use those on Lightning Rod, so it wasn't as big of a deal as it would have been for me in like 2018, 2019. So I love this ride, and I'm so grateful that I got to ride it when it still had its launch. And I look forward to seeing how it changes in the future. I hope it's much more reliable so more people get to experience this thing. Because I was worried, man. I was worried with this ride's reputation that I would miss out on it. So I'm super grateful. I got 9 rides in over 3 days at this park, so it was awesome. I love Lightning Rod. So yeah, what do you think about this controversial coaster? Thank you so much for watching. Thank you for listening. Please like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll catch you later.